Hi folks, this is All the Fruit, and today I will be foraging in the area of the giant stone in Heidelberg, or too much sun. In the area of the giant stone in Heidelberg. The giant stone are those two monoliths lying in an old quarry. They are beautiful rock houses and little caves nearby. And I do this video a little bit for a set location, for a set occasion. Yesterday I found a wonderful channel, Desert Drifter, about the guy who was basically exploring the American Southwest. Well, sandstone cliffs, sometimes similar to those, and a lot of old Native American dwellings here rediscovered in those cliffs. Remind me of my time 25 years ago when I was exploring the American Southwest and discovering a lot of those old Anasazi and other other cave dwellings. The funny thing is, we used to find cobs of corn in a lot of such places where you wouldn't expect them centuries after they have been abandoned. And he's finding cobs of corn in such places almost every day. So I started binge watching his channel. He was usually crawling around in areas similar to this, only that the vegetation was a lot less lush. Yeah, there are a lot of trees in the southwestern deserts, but it's still not that lush. However, the sad thing is, when I started reading the comments, I noticed this guy, much younger than me, has passed away. Not from climbing on the desert cliffs, but from, seems like a car accident. One day after I found this wonderful channel, I haven't binge watched a channel like this for a long time, so yeah, check it out. No, I'm not being paid for advertising this. And so I decided, as an homage to him, to do this video here in one area in Heidelberg that reminds me a tiny little bit of his explorations. I think I will do another video in a drier part of Germany, which reminds me even more of the American Southwest. Can you do several homage videos for one person? Oh well, I gotta do it anyways. Our tour starts in the old town near the tourist attractions, so it's quite easy to do it when you're visiting Heidelberg. Even for a day trip, you will need maybe an hour or so more. Maybe two, because it's a really great area. What can we forage here? Honey locusts, which coincidentally originate in dry areas of the US. However, now in May, the huge gel-filled fruits are not in season. A sycamore, also a very typical tree of the deserts in the American Southwest. However, this is not Platanus occidentalis from the deserts of North America. Well, at least it's only half Platanus occidentalis. It's a hybrid between Platanus orientalis and Platanus occidentalis. It's called Platanus ex hispanica. The fruits are not edible, but the fruits contain a horrible itching powder. Like all gardeners, I'm really afraid to work with this tree. Even now in spring you can find fruits from old year which will itch you up. Oregon grape, also from North America, but more from the moistish areas, although it can stand a lot of drought. Not in season, and also before you eat it, better boil it, otherwise you'll suffer. A native hawthorn, but of course not in season now in May. Even Cotoneaster horizontalis is not in season. This is a fruit you can forage basically all year round. This woman standing under a Japanese maple, also here giant knotweed from Japan. When they are young you can eat them like sorrel or rhubarb, but since they are so big and so easy to forage, you can overdo it on the oxalates. In this case, not oxalate needles, but dissolved oxalate, which is arguably even worse, because this oxalate will crystallize in your kidneys, known as kidney stones, and then, the needles will torture you, so better stay away from the knotweed. Stinging nettles. Americans are not very familiar with this, but for Europeans, this is the main plant to pay attention to, not to walk into it because it will mess you up. But it's one of the tastiest and most nutritious plants in Europe. However, the nasty stingers, encased in a case of oxalate, will inject you with a lot of formic acid and I think oxalate, and will hurt for hours, so be careful when foraging for it. Behind the glass bins, yeah, Germans are crazy for separating trash. Those bins are only for glass and only for the different types of glasses, and there is no German who will dare to throw their glass into the common bin. Nope, every bottle needs to go into a separate bin. Geum urbanum. The root has been used for centuries or millennia as a substitute for cloves. Everybody who couldn't afford imported cloves as a spice used the root of this stuff. Different thistles. You can forage them, but maybe with less aphids on them. And this is Cirsium arvense, the field thistle. Maybe the most noxious, the most damaging weed in all of Germany. The bryony, often used as a substitute for what was it, for mandragora? What was the English name for mandragora? The roots look like little men and so are supposed to scream when you dig them out. This one is just as poisonous as mandragora, but doesn't have the same medicinal effects, but was used to fake mandragora. Another exotic berberis, not sure which one this is, maybe Juliane. I don't think the fruits are edible. And here we have the trusty wild carrot. Interesting. This looks like Smyrnium olosatrum from the Mediterranean. Never seen it in Germany. And here is a young plant next to it. Oh, is it becoming invasive? I don't know, man. I mean, there are a lot of apiaceae here. Smyrnium olosatrum, yeah, you can pickle the young buds and I think even the young fruits. There are different ways to eat Smyrnium, but crazy. 15 years ago I would have totally published this. But yeah, tell me if you think this is Smyrnium olosatrum or something different. An edible Mediterranean plant which I see for the first time in Central Europe. The common ivy, you cannot eat it, but you can use it as soap. If you're in a survival situation or on a several day trekking hike, you can even wash your clothes with it. Sonchus, the Germans call them cabbage thistles. Well, because they are kind of related to thistles, it can be used like cabbage. Brambles, young bramble shoots can be eaten in spring. The last weeks were pretty dry. Yeah, you have to peel it before you eat it because of the spines. Still edible, but not the best anymore after weeks of dry weather. Not drought yet this year, but kind of on the dry side. Going underneath a road through this little tunnel, which seems to double as a privy. If you're in Heidelberg without the car, you can basically stop at the stop Friedrich-Ebert-Platz. 100 years ago, when there were a lot of jobless people in Germany, they carved many hundreds of those stones and placed them everywhere in the Heidelberg forest, so that nobody is ever gonna get lost again. Now, you have to go up a lot of serpentines. Oh, Chelidonium maius, a toxic plant with yellow to orange sap. If anything has a yellow or orange sap, stay away from it. It's so toxic, it will burn through your skin, and it has been used for millennia to treat warts. you put it on the wart until it kills the wart. It can even kill the super thick calluses of a wart. Aliaria officinalis, the garlic mustard. Not gonna try it here, I think. Too much wildlife interference, or shall we call it doggy toilet. A lot of work has been done here. A lot of trees have been cut down and shredded. Very acidic mulch, this one, mostly from conifers, but not only. However, they left the incredibly invasive Paulovnia. This is also known as the temperate balsa wood. It's almost as light as balsa wood. It's probably the fastest growing tree in the world. Unfortunately, it's invasive here. Why have they cut down so many other things but left this thing? The most toxic fruit of Europe, the common yew. And the wood is not only incredibly beautiful, it's also incredibly hard. Robin Hood's longbow and hundreds of thousands of other longbows in medieval Europe were made for yew. The best timber in all of Europe for making those longbows. And the fruits, believe it or not, the fruits are kind of edible, but every other part, including the seed, is toxic. Mock strawberry or Indian strawberry. You recognize it by the yellow flowers and by the fruits that point upwards. In the last decades, it's been replacing the tasty, edible European forest strawberry in our forests. Very sad. Elderberry. There are no elderberries on the elderberry right now in May, but the flowers are just as edible. You can make the flowers into pancakes, into syrup, into liquor, into tea, into many other things. Very soft wood, like the balsa. And there was a time when there were a lot of fleas in Europe and people were having flea circuses. And those fleas, they were playing football, for example. And for those fleas to play football, the pit of the elderberry stems was being used. Funny thing is that in the Americans, as well as in East Asia, as well as in Europe / the Canaries, they are very, very similar species to this Sambucus nigra, which grow all the way from like Siberia to down to Indonesia, and from Alaska down to Central and South America. So it's basically kind of a, is it a temperate thing adapted to the tropics or a tropical thing adapted to temperate areas? Hazelnut, one of the most important nuts to forage in Europe, but not in May. Oh yeah, the first reminiscence kind of desert drifter. Well, this is not the desert. A lot of the places he hiked, they are deserts but covered with trees and shrubs. This is definitely not a desert but a lush German forest. But just like with his old Native American ruins, there are old agricultural terraces and trouble walls everywhere. Around Heidelberg, like around most other European cities, terraces were built even on the steepest slopes to house agriculture, gardens and orchards near the town, near the city, where even people who were not really farmers could go and work for a couple hours and produce their own fruit and veg. Here we have a cherry plum. Somewhere down there I saw a big red ornamental cherry plum, but forgot to show it. Acer pseudoplatanus. This maple is basically the European sugar maple. In cold places like the Alps or Scandinavia or so, it was used for sugar syrup, just like the sugar maples in Canada. Now this uses, well, I guess they might still have some in Russia or even in Finland. Here is a bigger cherry plum. Comes from southeastern Europe and Anatolia. It's invasive in pretty much all of Europe. It's one of the parent species of the modern plums. And unlike other plums, you can actually eat those while they are green. Very sour, but it's a pleasant sourness. And the sourness of other plums is not so pleasant, probably mixed with tartness, bitterness. This is just sour. In Bulgaria, we also use them as a sour condiment in spring, because back in the old times when you didn't have lemons and such stuff, and your vinegar ran out at some time in spring, you just cooked your food with those and it became pleasantly sour. And look at it, this tree is loaded, thousands upon thousands of fruits on this little tree growing here, basically in the shade. Oh, look, we already have the ruins of ancient cultures hiding in alcoves in the sandstone. This reminds me also so much of Desert Drifter, and also of the Native American ruins I found in the American Southwest. No, of course it doesn't remind me of that, and it's not real ancient ruins. Those are, there is a kindergarten nearby, and this is just made for the entertainment of the children. A bunch of black locust, not really trees, probably some tree has been cut down here. Those are suckers. Unlike the honey locust, every part of the tree is toxic apart from the flowers, which should be in season now, but not on those little suckers. Here we have Prunus padus, the European version of the choke cherry. However, here in the shade, well, it's not in season right now, but anyways, I don't see a single unripe fruit or flower. I guess it's too shady. Here a slightly bigger garlic mustard. This might look like a deep forest, but believe me, I've hiked far up those slopes, and you see, this might actually be the remnant of an old rubble wall. You see rubble walls and also relics of cultivated plants very far up here. And if you look at old photographs and old drawings of Heidelberg, oh look, more ancient leprechaun ruins. You will see that all this area was actually fruit orchards, not vineyards. It's a northern slope. In Germany, usually northern slopes were not warm enough for wine cultivation, but definitely warm enough for orchards around here. Oh yeah, and just like in large parts of the American Southwest, the dominant rock here is sandstone, a reddish sandstone, like in the Grand Canyon. Leprechaun tree houses. This would be a typical situation in the desert Southwest. They used to make houses and whole villages under such rocky overhangs, not under tree stumps, but under rocky overhangs. Actually, not only in the American Southwest, in Spain and on the Canary Islands, there are similar caves. Sometimes there is a whole village inside such a cave. You know, they make little caves inside the big cave and basically have a whole village in there. Blackbirds. This is actually the traditional habitat of the blackbird. Forest with a lot of thickets and undergrowth. Only in the last 100-200 years have they spread to city parks. Here we see remnants of the most important plant for foraging in the Heidelberg area. And actually in most sub-Mediterranean and warm temperate areas of Europe. This is the European chestnut. And here is a chestnut tree. Actually, well, those things were so important that in Mediterranean mountains usually you didn't really grow corn. You had animals. They would graze under the chestnuts, and then in autumn you would collect the chestnuts and make flour and cakes and mush out of them and cook with them. Chestnuts are, I would say, clearly superior to corn. And for Heidelberg they were so important that here above the orchards there was a big chestnut forest. Like for centuries the mountains around Heidelberg were barren due to overexploitation, but also due to the defense of the medieval city. with one exception. Right above the city was a huge chestnut forest, which fed the city for centuries. And then, during a war, during a siege of Heidelberg, the enemy crept up on the city walls through those chestnut forests, conquered the city and burned it down. So was it worth it? I guess the people who lived at the time where the city was burned down would say no. The people from the last couple hundred years would say maybe yes, because otherwise they would have starved. Who lives on a pineapple under the sea? Oh, please don't copyright strike me for that. Ooh, there is a whole, I would have said Ewok village, but it's a little bit too colorful for Ewoks. Don't worry, we're gonna get to the real ruins soon, but I had to show you those little bits here. A European beach. Oh, and look at that. There is a little fairy house under it. Well, and somebody heard it and heard it more. Most important tree in Central Europe. Basically every place, every soil that's not too dry, too wet, or too acidic will be dominated by beeches. Other trees basically can only grow where it's too dry, too wet, or too acidic. And I guess somebody painted googly eyes and teeth on those stumps. Of course, a lot of forests in Central Europe are dominated by oaks. They were very important for feeding the wild, the domestic pigs and cows and other animals. Those are pretty old. So this part, we are basically entering a part which has been a forest for quite some time, over 100 years for sure. Which is strange because we are not too high above the city yet. Those should still be orchards, but nope. Those trees are very old. Here in Heidelberg, they didn't play such a big part in feeding pigs. And even nowadays, the wild boars, they don't touch them. Why should they touch them when there are millions of chestnuts every year on the ground? Chestnuts are 1,000 times tastier than acorns. Even people can eat oak acorns, but it's not the same as eating a tasty chestnut. This is clearly where the place where the fairy folk learns how to avoid us big folks. Yeah, but little buddies, no matter how well you hide, if you paint all your structures in such bright colors, everybody knows you're around. The laurel cherry, an invasive evergreen plant from the Caucasus Mountains, Anatolia and the Balkans. The fruits are very bitter, containing a lot of not oxalate this time, maybe also oxalate, but they're basically mostly containing cyanide. However, some people eat them. I do. You shouldn't. Don't eat them. Don't demonetize me. So that's how the little forest gnomes process huge tree trunks. Look at that, a wild gooseberry. Is it a wild gooseberry or is it a remnant of cultivation? Could even be a hybrid between the wild gooseberry and some cultivated one. Well, up here, since this is kind of foresty, it could be a wild one, it could also be a relic of cultivation. I really don't want to decide. Oh, and look at that. More little folks living there. And I guess they painted this thing like a dragon to scare us away from their houses. Wichtel Postamt. Gnome Post Office. Für Ideen, Fragen, Wünsche und Anmerkungen. For ideas, questions, wishes and remarks. Oh, look at that. Nobody has written anything. Maybe because they forgot the paper. Yeah, I guess those kids, they probably walk every day up to the forest kindergarten and saw those little colorful things here and there were put, a hammock with some little with some little folks inside. They are put there to keep them like engaged and running upwards, and so kids have an attention span almost as short as mine, so You need to keep us entertained all the time. Ooh. Huge monster. Don't complain that we haven't reached the real ruins yet. If some little kindergarteners can have so much patience every day, you can at least once. Oh. Forestry department has done a lot of work here. Beech is one of the plants with edible leaves. However, this might be too tough already. It's like eating paper. Oh, hi gnomes. Funny why this prime real estate here hasn't been developed yet. Ah well, at least those little colorful gnome houses, they really resemble the stuff Desert Drifter was researching in the American Southwest. They really, those little folks, ARAC, UISA. I wonder which gnome space agency is using bullet thermoses to reach space. They might have some trouble with the canopy here. And what did I want to say? A lot of those gnome houses, they're in similar locations like where you would find remnants of old Native American settlements in the Southwest, because in those shady places in rock alcoves they would mostly survive. Speaking of survive, I guess that means danger. Don't go up here. Those are some very religious gnomes here. Here an old chestnut with double stem has been cut down. Very typical, this type of cracking along the rings. Very typical. So even after years, when the bark is gone, I can still recognize this as a chestnut. Right now I can recognize it from the very typical bark, but after decades without the bark, it still looks like a chestnut. Here you see an old stump. This might be 15 years old, and could be 20 years. I've cut down chestnuts 15 years ago, and yes, the stumps are still standing, but that's definitely a chestnut stump. The timber is, in Germany it's considered kind of worthless, but like in Italy and other countries, they like it. Pine cones. It's not a native pine, it's Pinus strobus, also from North America. It's invasive here. All true pines have edible seeds, but with many species they are just too small to matter. Here in Heidelberg they have also planted edible pinyon pines. However, they really cannot decide which species they have. They're in a much higher area in the hills. Maybe we'll go there someday. A wild cherry. Such a tall, unbranched trunk will be very valuable, or would be very valuable, if the foresters hadn't grazed it several times with the bulldozer. Now it's much less valuable. And so close to the city, they're probably not 100% wild cherries. Maybe the fruits will be a little bigger, a little bit less bitter. I've seen a lot of those hybrids between domestic and wild cherries near settlements in Germany. A black locust tree, this is the one which goes from right to left. Used to be very popular here because of their wonderful timber. Became very popular in Germany after they lost their colonies 100 years ago as replacement for acacia timber to make wheels for cars and stuff. And nowadays black locust here is very popular for outdoor furniture, benches and playgrounds and so on, because nowadays nobody wants to paint their playgrounds and benches with poisonous dyes, and black locust can survive outdoors for quite a long time. However, I don't think this is black locust. This here, no, not even this is black locust. No, this is not black locust. It's not painted, neither is it black locust, but then it will basically decompose after a couple years. There is also this other philosophy: don't paint them, just put them somewhere. If they decompose after 5 years, you replace them with other benches. It's more environmentally friendly and cheaper. Just wonder what happens if you don't replace them in time and people sit on them and they collapse. But yeah, I would say this is oak, and this here is some conifer. Could be duck fir. Yeah, definitely. And the feet, this could be oak or even beech, and this is probably some fir or spruce. Yeah, no black locust on this bench. Finished with the climb. Remember when I was young, all those forest parts, they were paved with porphyre gravel, but now all the porphyre quarries and also all the sandstone quarries around here are closed. So this is some sort of limestone-like stuff from far away. Actually, when they wanted to build some stuff in Heidelberg, and there was it has to be with sandstone identical to the local sandstone. And there's oops, in the whole region, not even nearby, but even far away, there were no sandstone quarries left. They sourced the sandstone from China. It looks like the local Heidelberg sandstone, but whoever knows, knows. By the way, if you look at such little cliffs and rock faces here in the forest, a lot of them are old quarries. In some smaller towns around Heidelberg, a lot of them would even be entrances to underground mines for silver, lead, vitriol, Schwerspat, I forgot the English name and other things. But around Heidelberg, well, on those slopes there used to be a lot of iron mining in Celtic times. But around here, I guess it's mostly sandstone for building the city. Actually, you can find hundreds of work pieces. Like somebody said, there are over 100 millstones lying around in the forest, because the stonemasons would just find some nice rock bigger than those lying around in the open, which means that it can withstand erosion, and started chipping away at it and produced thousands of those. And in a couple hundred cases, when a crack was discovered pretty late, those were abandoned here in the forest. So look around closely, you would find a millstone somewhere. I found some already. Approaching the giant stone, which is also in not one but a whole cascade of old quarries. I mean, yeah, those cities, they want to be built. And not only Heidelberg, of course, the much bigger city of Mannheim, and also a lot of other towns and cities downriver where there are no rocks. They were built mostly with rocks from the Neckar Valley around Heidelberg. Lots of big quarries around here. This is one of the small ones. Yeah, Desert Drifter. Here you have your petroglyphs from many different epochs. Some old faded ones up there, some newer ones down here. Sometime the cliff face collapsed and was never removed. Yeah, those two big boulders were left here. I wonder if at that time already there was no quarrying here, or they thought it looks nice. And there's been a lot of tourism here for the last 200 years. So yeah, they were left lying around like this. So here there is a lot of graffiti. Graffiti is taken very seriously in Heidelberg, because there are a couple really old ones. Freemason graffiti, graffiti in the student prison and so on. Well, this is somebody who put a lot of work into this. Also, there are a lot of official graffiti here on different cliffs. And there is, of course, everybody and their mother, if they have a chisel or even a nail, would scratch their name into those things. Yeah, I don't know, man. After a couple 100 years, it becomes valuable, but now it's considered vandalism, so better don't do it. The giant stone is a popular bouldering area. From the time while bouldering was not done in a room, but was done outdoors. Basically, bouldering was climbing on small, up to house-sized boulders without a rope. So they would usually put mattresses down here to stop them from falling. Nowadays, bouldering is on a plastic wall in a big sports hall, but this is one of the original bouldering places in Heidelberg, and it's being used profusely. Because bouldering is only half the fun, and sometimes you want bigger cliffs. As you can see, there are a lot of carabines up there where you can attach your ropes. And they are being put at not so easily accessible spots, so I guess yeah, in order to attach your rope there, you have to be either quite good or use another rope and upsell from the big oaks above the cliff. Brucey, don't forget your ascent. Enjoy Brucey. No idea. There is another big cliff nearby above the town of Riesenstein, where they have a lot of commemorative plaques for all those rock climbers. I don't think the rock climbers who fell from that cliff, but all the rock climbers from the club who fell from anywhere, but none around here. Using a lot of magnesia for climbing, but yeah. And here, you see, I don't see it up there, where the rain can reach and where there is moss, but down here I see it. A bit of a similar situation like in the southwest, where cliff overhangs protect, well, protect, what do you call it? Not relics, well, yes, relics, protect, artifacts, because since this magnesia was applied there by hand, it's an artifact. This dirt pile is also an artifact, but where does it come from? Did they clean the floor here or what? An acorn. Yeah, here you can find a lot of them all the way into spring, because as I said, the wild boars don't care about them. They have much tastier chestnuts to nibble on. Yeah, since we have been a tourist town for a very long time, somebody even made a ladder and the spots to grab on. Oh, here in the rock. Oh, and this looks almost like the things they use for their feet in the Native Americans use for their feet. But again, the style is very different. Also, our red sandstone is much more red than theirs. I once wanted to do habitat management here, but of course I wanted to be paid. However, I guess they made the standard deal with the rock climbers. You're allowed to climb as long as you cut down the trees. Oh yeah, of course there is a legend about the giant stone. Something like there was a giant living there when his son... okay, I have to... When his son became of age, father brought him to the other side of the valley and threw a rock over here, and the son threw an even bigger rock that fell on top of the father's rock, and so the father realized that he is a real giant. It's basically a similar story then with the Giant's Causeway in Ireland and its Pondo in Scotland, where some giants were supposed to throw those things. But here the distance is not so far. Also, I'm happy they left that little birch here. Birches are not too common nowadays in the Heidelberg forest, and it's small and gnarly and probably pretty old. Yeah, the maple there had to go, but yeah, I'm happy they left that birch. By the way, you can also tap birches like maples, only what you get is not that sweet. It's rather, it's also not savory, it's a lot more watery, so you usually don't use birches to get sugar, usually use them to get clean water in swampy areas and whenever you prefer to drink birch water instead of maple syrup. Oh, and another tree you can use to obtain sap from it is the walnut. I tried it a couple times, mostly unsuccessfully. There is a small one growing here. Walnut is kind of invasive around here. Well, I guess chestnut it's also kind of invasive, but it's more accepted here. Invasive, they were brought by the Romans. Walnut, Welschenus. Walnut means, yeah, the Welsh nut, but Welsh in Germany doesn't mean from like from the British Isles, it means Italian. So Welschenus, the Welsh nut, is the nut that comes from Italy, not from Wales. Oh, a little, is it? Yeah, a little rowan growing here. Of course, rowan berries are also edible after preparation, but this tree is still too young to produce berries. You can see again the carabines. And also, I would say that the rock of the father was considerably bigger. Well, definitely the rock that was thrown first is bigger. This one has about the same surface area, but is thinner. What do you think? I think that this is... Oof. Why? Yeah. It's a bit of a problem when you cannot use both hands, dude. This is a hands-on job. Oh. Oh. Hops growing here. Of course, hops is being used to flavor beer, but in early spring you can also eat the young stems, the young vines, as long as they are still look like white asparagus, more or less. However, this stuff is 100 times more expensive than white asparagus. Bunch of raspberries growing there. Everything else around here is blackberries. Of course, you can recognize them very easily in summer when they are fruiting. Raspberries are red, blackberries are black. But right now, good to know where there are still some raspberries because they are not so common anymore. But I promised you real cliff dwellings, right? Not this little kindergartner stuff. So let's get to the real cliffs where there are dwellings. Some nice old chestnuts. Those were probably planted in the time when those were not forests but chestnut groves, planted for the sustenance of the people. I would say that those trees they are all pretty much the same age and all 80 to 100 years old maybe. The one in the background may be older. Here we arrive at another cliff hidden in the forest. Not so many people know about it. This big buttress was put here to support the cliff from collapsing. Also, those cracks, they were walled up. This reminds me so much of the Desert Drifter videos. All those little old walls in the cliffs. Over there, a bigger hole in the cliff has been closed. Why did they do it? Well, one reason could be there is a platform down there, but still, if this thing collapses, it will probably hit the houses down here. But also there is a cliff house or platform, something on top of it. See all the walls? Here they have also closed a couple of the cracks. And down here, traces of wild boars. I think survival in the Heidelberg forest would be easy with those masses of wild boars. And down here, I've known this for about 30 years. There is a little tunnel. It doesn't go very far. Can I actually turn on the flashlight? Hello. I want a flashlight. Oh well. It's not deep anyways. Okay. Guess it's still too deep and too dark. An artifact. Also, is there a stone missing? Or is this a drainage for the buttress? Okay. Taking my second phone. Turning on the light. I visit this place about once in 10 years, and every time I find something new. Well, first let's look at the cave. So there is a 90-degree bend, and then it continues for like a meter. I wonder, probably it was supposed to become bigger. There is a little spot where they probably put their lantern or something. And I guess they were supposed to chisel a lot deeper. And 30 years ago, there was a treasure chest here full of lots of stuff. Among other things, some shells. Then later, 10 years ago, there was some trash here. And now there are some tools here. A hammer and a ladle. Oh, I wonder if there is a hammer. Will there also be, no, not a sickle, but a chisel? What is this? Okay, I'm holding two. No, that's just a piece of wood. Huh. Nice hammer. And a nice old, what is it? Not cast iron, but that's hammered iron ladle. I don't think this was a ladle for food. This looks more like a ladle that was used to pour. Oh, I have to use this for another video. Yeah, that I think that was rather used to pour lead for making bullets and little toy soldiers and stuff. You know, nearby there is also this area. You know the story where a hunter sells his soul to the devil, and the devil promises him for his soul he can make bullets that will never miss. And yeah, in a rocky gorge nearby, the hunter and the devil, they make bullets from lead, and those bullets never miss. Yeah, I really need to make the video. I used to play as a child in that gorge over there. Yeah, I think it's not a ladle for food, but it's a ladle for metal. Yeah, I'm leaving those things here. I really would like to take them, but I could even use the hammer, but the ladle would just be for fun. But no, let's leave it here. Somebody brought it here. It was not here in the last couple times I was here. Oh, wait. 1940. Okay, now I know what this was. This was a bunker. But since 1940 is written here, probably here. Oh, is this a swastika? Here, this area? Yeah. 1940, they didn't start the bombings in Syria until later. Interesting. This was probably made to be a bunker. Yeah, but funny, if they started 1940 until 1945, they could have dug a lot deeper. Heidelberg, at least the old town, was never bombed by, but of course they didn't know that in advance. But yeah, that makes sense, a bunker. But why didn't they build it any deeper? Maybe somebody said the cliff will collapse or something. How to get to the upper part, to this cliff house or whatever. Oh, there is a climbing rope. Not a professional rope. I remember you could buy those for €1.99. Am I going up there? If I climb, this big branch will fall on my head, so if I had decent shoes, totally, but no. No way here. More ropes. Those must have been hanging here for quite a long time. 10 years or so. Look at that. This rope, I'm pretty sure this was not green to begin with. Or was it? Didn't we say we are not doing such stupid things today? Ooh. Nah, dude, not with one hand and not with those shoes. 2 hands and shoes, no problem, but oh no. How to get back now? Yeah, hot. More cliffs. Don't remember this cliff area being so extensive. I guess because I always returned from the other side. Also overhangs and alcoves where artifacts like carvings, petroglyphs would remain for quite a long time, but the only petroglyphs I see here quite modern. Look at that. More such little caves. Those two are definitely not natural. You can see the chisel marks. Oh. Also here, look. Again, the cliff has been repaired and reinforced here, even with bricks, concrete, and oh, yeah, speaking of the devil, that's lead. Where did it fall? It's the same color as the dead leaves. Yeah, lead. So this was serious business here. They put a lot of thinking and repairing, and here they hung something. So they repaired the cliff and started 2 more probably bunkers here. But so much so has fallen down that the entrances are closed up. There could be a little alcove up there. Yeah, but you have a lot of those old bunker shafts, mines, tunnels in random places around here. But during the last decade, somebody, maybe the time, or maybe I think somebody has been very diligent in closing those locations. If there was a garden, or also in the 60s and 70s and 80s, a lot of people used to live in those abandoned forests. If there is a garden, you often find more artifacts. An old oven or something, more bits and pieces down here, a wall. I have cleared out such old dwellings. Often truckloads of trash, mostly alcohol bottles. Unfortunately, I've thrown away a lot of valuable stuff. Original jerry cans, old pots and vats and stuff. Yeah, well, I had no idea what to do with them, but still it would have been nice not to throw them away. Look at that. This might look like a root. It looks a lot like the other roots, or like random branches, but it's not a root, it's a pipe. And this is a wall. It might look very similar to the cliff, but it's an old rubble wall. Huh. Such places used to hold so many mushrooms when I was young. In the 80s and 90s, would collect so many mushrooms, and then around 2000 something happened in this area. Talked to several mycologists and told local people. Another wall and another one, the third one. They all say yes, it happened around 2000. Nobody knows why the mushrooms disappeared. Not completely, but like 95% of the amount. Supposed to dry the last week, so there wouldn't be a lot of mushrooms here now anyways, but still, even in mushroom time when those forests were usually flooded, nowadays it's hard to find anything. Found a rubble ball at least. Oh, somebody has harvested a lot of chestnuts. However, not the fruits, unfortunately. The fox or badger has stuck here. It's not a typical place for a wild boar to dig. This is more something more agile. Not that I said it, if there is a dead mouse or something here, the wild boar couldn't dig it out. Totally could. More chestnuts lying around. Well, the old husks from last year. And here you have the hole of some sort of mouse, and like they used to do in spring, they throw out the old stuff. See, the old leaves and chestnuts. I shouldn't go there, they have hantavirus. Oh, burleek, one single plant. It's a clonal plant. One plant is very unusual. Oh yeah, somebody harvested a lot of chestnuts. And black locust here, and maple here and here, chestnut, 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 dead tree, dead chestnut, 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 and they're collecting thin as well as thick trunks here. Harvesting every quality from the best to the worst. I wonder what it is for paper, for firewood, probably not for construction. Even the hollow trees are coming. There is a road with a very nice, well, kind of pavilion. It's without the roof. It's just a parapet, the stone parapet to look down here. And above it there is another bigger quarry, another level, but I'm too lazy to go there. Want to finish exploring this part down here. Yeah, 95% is chestnut. Here another maple. Notstand. Notstand means something like emergency. 1934, and guess the circular thing they chiseled out between that. They were still some Todestag. Yeah. Well, where shall we start? Well, this jobless stuff was mostly in the late 20s, like 29 to the early 30s. This was 34. The mustache man was already in power, and they still had a couple of those unpaid work, basically unpaid work, and that's why there was a swastika in between the 1934. For the day of for the death of the president, of the Reichspräsident of von Hindenburg, on the 31st, on the 3rd of August. Yeah, you know, before this guy died, well, he also had a mustache. Everybody had a mustache back then. If you had no mustache, you were either a woman or a child. Well, Hindenburg, the president, died, and until then, Adolf was just chancellor. But then he said, from now on, I'm chancellor and president. It's a little bit similar to president and vice president, only that the chancellor has a bit more power than the vice president, had a bit more power than the vice president back then. But then when Hindenburg died, Adolf said, I will be chancellor and president. Adolf was a little bit like a modern Orange man. Yeah, and then he invented the title of Führer. Basically, I'll be president and vice president at the same time, president and chancellor at the same time. Funny thing is, Hindenburg only became president decades after he was. Oh, and he has another thing that reminds you a lot of Biden and Trump. There is an anecdote. One of his aides put his lunch paper from his sandwich on the table, and Hindenburg's son snatched it away and said, "Don't do this. The old gal will sign anything." Yeah, sounds like modern history. Well, back then this guy had been retired for decades already. He was retired already before that. He was a general in the Kaiser's army, and then he retired at some time. And then after he retired, World War I started, and he said, "I volunteer." Everybody said, "Dude, you're ancient. You are retired, stay away." And then when the Russians broke the German front, they brought him out, and yeah, soon after that the Russian Empire was not anymore, so everybody was worshipping him. And then almost 20 years later they brought him out for the second time out of retirement. Must have been, 90 at this time, and made him president. And when he died, as I said, the title of Führer was invented. And this is a commemorative plaque without the ancient Indian symbol. Often this timber will lie around in the forest for years, and often it will rot. There were a couple times when timber prices fell so much that rotting timber was everywhere, and everybody asked the forestry guys, "Can we have this timber?" They said, "We don't care about this timber, it's already sold. If they want it to live in the forest to rot, more nutrients for us." But yeah, it was very typical to see rotten timber. This one is still fresh, still very new. But yeah, reminds me of this time, I think in the 90s or in the early 2000s, where timber was cut down and led to rot everywhere around Germany. There is a border marker, a very fancy one. That means this is some important public piece of land. Maybe it's the Have 1720. Have, what would be Have? Heinrich, I don't know, man. Some prince elector around here, 1720. Yeah, those fancy chiseled ones, they were usually the official ones between public and private lands. Between private pieces of land, they were much more simple. But that's Heidelberg. There is even a book about all those little monuments in the Heidelberg forest. And I met a guy who has been researching them for decades. The book is already decades old, and he wants to write a new one. I cannot wait, because I might know a couple tidbits of information about those things here and there, but it's not the same as researching for a couple decades. However, when I met him, he might have been twice my age, but I was able to teach him quite a bunch of stuff, because it seems that if you have been working in and around those forests for a couple decades, you start to know shit. I was able to tell him about another millstone, and about the Valerie column, and a couple other things here. Riesenstein. There is, by the way, something like an NGO, like a club that's supported by the city. They are going around sandblasting or spray washing those things and painting them with new paint, and they have already commissioned 2 or 3 new monuments. But of course nowadays such stuff is incredibly expensive. Even chiseling such one thing, making it beautiful enough, it's very expensive. Back then they didn't pay they paid the people pennies so that they could buy food. It was those measures in the 20s and 30s when all those things were made. The purpose was not to pay the people, but to give them work so that they are not bored. They work basically for free. They did this again in the 90s and 2000s. You could work for €1, that's $1 a day, no tips. It seems I'm above those structures now. A horse chestnut, a feral horse chestnut, not related to the edible chestnut. The British, by the way, used to make explosives from the fruits of the horse chestnuts during both World Wars. It's mildly invasive around here. It comes from the Balkans and Anatolia. And here again, an old wall integrated into this cliff. Oh, remnants of an old staircase, it seems. And again, more rubble walls. I wonder, was this part of the quarry? Was there really agriculture here? Usually you have such walls where you have orchards, or it could also have been some touristy thing. As I said, tourism has been quite a big thing in Heidelberg for about 200 years. Oh, here, by the way, some animal has cracked the walnut. Where is the walnut tree? Now I'm above those walls which are on top of the cliff. Oh, and here, Philadelphus coronarius. There are areas here on this slope where this stuff grows in hectares in the underbrush of the forest. Relic of cultivation, becoming invasive. Yeah, I wonder, was there really a house here, or was this maybe... Oh, look at that, there is an arch down there. I didn't see it from above. See? See? Here. See? An arch. I wonder if there was really a house up here, or maybe it was just some platform, or they were probably selling refreshments or stuff, and you could look down on the city. So now I'm standing where this house or this platform should have been. However, if it was a stone house, there should be more stuff left. Not if it was a wooden house, of course, but it could just have been a platform with a parapet. Oh, look at this beautiful old bottle. Oh, oof. A bottle with a handle, so fancy. Haha. What is it? Ho ho. Abo. Interesting. Yeah, what do you think, folks? Wooden house, or simply a panoramic terrace? Oh, Buxus sempervirens, a relic of cultivation, so rather a terrace than a house. This is not really invasive around here. It's where it's planted. It's usually a relic of cultivation, and a type of bug has eaten all the leaves, and now it's sprouting again. The wood. The wood was used for bull bows. It's very hard white wood. Basically, it's one of the plant materials which are called plant ivory. Yeah, but if they are those old, but then those Buxus must have been older than this maple. Strange. What do you think, folks? Vote on it. House or panoramic platform? There are still a couple of those panoramic platforms on public and also on private land, and a lot of people have diverse flags on them, or shall I say not so diverse flags on them. Chestnut. Only chestnut rots and breaks like this. No, not horse chestnut. The real deal, which I don't see around here right now. One more look at the Riesenstein. Starting my descent back. Oh, well, it's not that. The rest of the trip is not that difficult. Just follow the road. So, folks, yeah, This was my homage video to Desert Drifter. As I said, I discovered this channel yesterday, binge watched it for hours. Reminded me so much of my youth in the American Southwest, where I was doing basically similar stuff like him. And then I had to do something the next day when I learned that the poor guy has died much younger than me. Such a pity, such a great guy, all the things he could have discovered. I don't know if I'm even allowed to do homage videos after I've known him for less than 24 hours. Well, I've known his channel for less than 24 hours. I never met him. Don't know if he was even born when I was exploring the Southwest, but I'll try to make a couple more videos like this in cliffy areas, preferably drier ones than this lush forest with cliff settlements and old artifacts. Tell me if you would like to see some more videos of that type, and of course I'll munch on everything only remotely ediblish during those videos. Tell me what you think about this idea, folks. Apart from that, stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from desert cliff dwelling areas. And of course, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.